Hello and welcome to this episode of the Sticky Note Marketing Show. I am your host, Mary Czarnecki, and today I'm excited to introduce you to Ericka Scott. She is our guest expert today. Ericka is a strategic business advisor with over 2 decades of experience, and now she helps entrepreneurs unlock clarity and focus. So today we are going to be digging into some very important things for many of you, I know, which is strategic planning, goal setting, and how to do those things while still actually managing your day-to-day business and responsibilities. So Ericka, thank you so much for joining us here on the Sticky Note Marketing Show.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks, Mary.
Now, I know there are definitely folks who know you or are familiar with your work, but for those listeners and those of us watching who might be meeting you for the first time, can you introduce us a little bit to who you work with and the work you do?
Sure. So I really found a niche with working with companies where that owner operator really needs to stay in their zone of genius. And so they really don't have time to work on the business. They need to be working in the business. And although the framework of strategic plan now that I've created, it works for all kinds of businesses, sizes. I haven't found an industry that it doesn't work for. There might be personalities it doesn't work for. But for those that are looking for like a system, if they struggle with a clear system to align their team around, Strategic Plan Now has just been a really great tool for creating a through line through the organization for strategic planning and implementation. But I've really found that niche is with the people who really need to be engaged in the activity of their zone of genius or their expertise to really drive revenue in their business. They don't have time for strategic planning or working with their team to align around that strategic plan.
Amazing. So if that's you, if you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, I'm in the day-to-day, I'm in the weeds, I got to get it done. And strategic planning has sounded good, or, oh yeah, I've done that before. It sounds like they're the ones who should be grabbing their sticky notes today.
Yeah, I often say like strategic planning is often one of those words. It's like a dirty word or a scary word, and it really isn't. It doesn't have to be. Once you have the right frameworks and you're able to put it into place, teams thrive when they know where everybody is headed and what the responsibilities are. Having that clarity is really what makes the difference for teams.
Let's start with that because, like you said, when someone hears strategic planning or I need to develop a strategic plan, it can feel a little intimidating. So, what would you invite people to think about when you say strategic planning? What gets you excited about developing a strategic plan?
So what really gets me excited is when I help companies get really clear on what I call their ideology. It's a strategic plan overview that's their mission, vision, core values, and strategic objectives. And that's really the first phase of the strategic plan now framework. So it's really the strategize. Let's get really clear on who your company is, who you serve, where you're headed, how you're going to behave together as an organization. And then those really foundational strategic objectives, they're going to be, again, that thing that everybody's working towards that vision. And so I just found that once you have that strategic plan overview, it can be used in onboarding, in evaluations, and just keeping the team even quarterly check-ins, monthly check-ins. It gives everybody then a basis for moving into the next part, which would be optimizing. And that it involves implementing different efficiencies based on the expertise of the people you've hired. So that's like making your managers pull on their expertise and their knowledge, right? And their experience. They're the experts. I'm just giving you a framework to pull it all together. So they then create their departmental plans, action plans that are all feeding goals that are tied to key performance indicators and real tactics things moving faster.
And I think you highlight something that's very important that I just want to pause and make sure people really are grasping from what you said, which is there's a order of operations, right? There's a first step, and I know your signature process, the strategic plan now framework, is really fantastic because it gives people that order of operations. Like you said, if you aren't clear about your goals, your company, who you serve, what it is you do, it's the wrong way around if you were to start instead with, okay, what are we going to do? What's the tactical plan? So I love the fact that I just wanted to highlight, make sure people heard you and you said, look, we have to start here because if you jump into the tactical plan, it's the wrong way around. Have you seen that happen? Have you gone in and been able to help people that maybe did start with the wrong step first?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. Either they've done some of the strategic planning, but they did it in such a way that they didn't get to the phase three, which is accountability and implementation and making it stick. And so they've invested all of this in a strategic plan that really never gets going or sustains. And so that piece of building it into the culture is super important. And if you have some of those elements of the mission, vision, core values, strategic objectives, if they aren't all working together and they aren't in alignment with the actual organization and how it's functioning, then you need to reassess it and get it in a good place. And so there's that. But then there's also the piece of the people who have just had tremendous success despite themselves, despite a clear plan. And now they're really struggling to continue to scale with their team as they've grown and added more people to their team, then they really don't have that alignment between their managers. And so can be used at the initial phase or as a recalibration of sorts to give you just that framework. And once you have the framework in place, it really can become rinse and repeat to the action plans and those departmental plans, as long as you keep those accountability frameworks functioning. And I really do work with businesses to make sure those accountability frameworks meet their needs. So I don't have a one program fit all. I really have studied a lot of different frameworks for accountability, whether it's digital task management through something like Asana or Monday.com, or a simple spreadsheet, meeting the client where they are, that organization, and really implementing the tools that are going to stick and work for them to make the progress they need.
And I think that's a really important point because a lot of times on this podcast, if folks have been listening or watching for a while, we try to give best practices or examples. But obviously, one of the benefits to working with you independently, working with me independently, is we can then take our frameworks of these proven processes and then customize them for someone's specific scenario. But what would you say if you think about the folks that you've worked with that might be similar to some of the folks watching and listening us today? I know one of the common challenges that you mentioned was how do we then get into not just creating the plan, but then the accountability and the follow-up? So how can people actually ensure that their team themselves don't get distracted by that day to day, especially if they're in a role where they have to be involved day to day? How do they not let that become a distraction from staying accountable?
So once you have that clear strategic plan overview and then those action plans, those become the roadmap for assessing progress. And so whatever system you have in place, you'd have a series of meetings. I know nobody wants another meeting, but like when you have meetings, making them effective. And so again, I have another framework to use that you implement these strategic meetings with clear agendas, responsibilities, people taking action and doing things before so that really they're reporting out, and meetings don't just become a place to like dump everything and complain. So it really becomes, hey, I'm going to come here. I have 5 minutes to report on my area, and these are the things that I was responsible for. Maybe these are some roadblocks that I hit. And as a management team, we're going to remove those. And that just may be one type of meeting, but really giving a voice to the people throughout the organization so that you can identify problems sooner and remove those roadblocks in order to, again, move forward on those really key objectives and strategic initiatives for moving the company forward.
It's so funny too, because there's an unlimited number of memes out there and cartoons dedicated to bad meetings, right? But what I'm hearing you say is that it's not the meeting's fault. It's the fact that you're doing the wrong thing in the meeting, that the meeting is structured poorly, run poorly, and there is a better way. There's a better way to run those meetings.
Absolutely. They're definitely, whether it's having consistency in agendas or responsibilities and having clear expectations,
Mhm.
there are definitely systems to put in and small adjustments that really can help organizations have much more effective meetings.
Would you say also, or have you seen it, that when you actually do meetings right, you could have less?
Correct. Absolutely. Yes. And it also helps with infusing those things of the mission, vision, core values into the culture of the organization. Because there's like another meeting that you would have like a personal priority check-in. So giving employees an opportunity to actually voice either their concerns or ideas, it really can help the organization to see the blind spots that they're not seeing at a higher level. And so when you engage your employees at all levels in conversations, you're able to really move through things because you're getting that more comprehensive vantage point.
And I think that's a really good point too, because no matter what size business you're running, if you're listening to this and you're running a local carpet cleaning business, or you are the team leader in an enterprise organization and you're responsible for a single brand, that engagement is not easy and it doesn't just come naturally. You have to instill as a leader, as an owner, that in your team. I've had the experience when I was at Johnson at the beginning of my career. At Johnson and Johnson, you have something called the Credo, right? Every employee gets the Credo when they first start working there. You have it on your desk. Usually it's on the wall. And you may not have memorized it, but it's instilled in you and it creates this alignment, like you said, at all different levels, right? Whether you were a janitor, whether you were a summer intern, whether you were a group vice president, you knew that this credo is how we do work. This is how we operate as an organization. And you feel that connection to your day to day. So when you're working with people and you're seeing this not happening, what's one of the first steps that you take with them to start to instill that connection that helps avoid that feeling of, okay, I'm just a cog in the machine. My to-do list doesn't really connect to the business mission. How do you
Yeah.
fix that?
I've been fortunate that the companies that I work with so far have been really like in that 10 to 50 employee range. And that allows me to conduct assessments with them and then follow up individually to really get a comprehensive picture. And then again, giving that employee the sense that what they're doing matters and that they can actually contribute to how the organization is making decisions or avoiding costly mistakes as well. How often is it that employees now just like, nobody asked me? I'm like, we can't live in an organization or where those things you just wait to be asked, because that's where there can be some really major challenges for organizations. So by creating that buy-in and making people feel like they're part of it, and through just asking, giving them a place that you listen and are able to get their honest feedback. And that actually is one piece of the value of bringing in an outside person to help with the assessment. I have found it tremendously helpful in that these people want to be heard and they haven't had a place to necessarily or consistency to be able to say the things that they want to. And some really great ideas can come out of those assessments when they feel the anonymity of telling somebody that isn't their boss, right? Or the boss's boss, right? They know that it's going to be heard, but it's not going to be like, this was said by this person at this date. It becomes a more comprehensive report. And obviously, I want to give credit to employees where credit's due, especially when they have some really great ideas. But when there are some feedback that maybe isn't the best or the thing that they want to be saying to their boss, it gives them that space to highlight some issues that the company perhaps needs to overcome.
And it's so true because you can have the best intention as a business owner, as a boss, to get these sentiments, to get this feedback from your employees, but let's be honest, there are just some things that they're going to say to you, Erica, and not to me, the boss, right? So having that external filter, kind of source that they can talk to and share that with, I think is so important. I don't know
Yeah.
if you've ever seen the movie about the story of how Flamin' Hot Fritos and Doritos came into being over at Frito-Lay, but when I just watched that movie with my boys a couple nights ago, and that all came from an idea of a lower level maintenance worker who had this idea of actually being able to connect with a community who loved spicy food. And at the time, Frito-Lay just didn't offer it. But
Mhm.
if that boss hadn't been open to listening and connecting with people throughout the organization, it wouldn't have happened. So sometimes you just need the external person to ask the questions.
Yeah. And then the other piece I would say is really important is understanding personalities. Personalities play a big role in the position that you hold. So understanding the personalities of even themes of personalities among departments is interesting to see. What do we need to overcome, especially when organizations are in that mid like level size of the 10 to 50? It's there often are a cluster of people in the same positions that might have similar characteristics that need to be overcame like over the overall organization. When you look at the average of personalities, I'll use the DISC assessment often. And even though it's only 4 personality types for the billions of people in this world, it at least gives some context and helps us start a conversation around how do we come together when there's a particular group of people that maybe they're not the super decisive ones, or they're not going to be as bold as, say, the marketing and sales team. And so making sure that they have equal voice so that it isn't just always that louder voice or more prominent personality that comes through, that we're also seeking that input from people of different personalities, just because they might be the introvert and not speak up in a meeting. By structuring things a certain way, you can really start to get those ideas out of people that make an impact.
That's so true, because great ideas can come from anywhere. It doesn't always have to be the loudest person in the room.
Absolutely.
Now, I know one of the things that I've been challenged with in the past, I'll admit it, and I'm sure others listening to this today also can resonate with, is how to set those objectives in your strategic plan that are actually meaningful, not just the ones that, oh, it was in the template or someone said that I should put this, but how do people actually start that process? How do you help them really decide what objectives are going to be the most meaningful and realistic for their specific scenario?
Through those assessments I already talked about, where we're assessing the people listening, that also happens with the management team, leadership team as well. And through that process and a series of questions, I really get to the heart of what the organization is. Again, bringing in that mission and vision. I think of the mission and vision as bookends. So the mission being like what we do, and the vision being like where are we headed 10 years from now, where do we want to be? And then we fill out the middle. And so by doing those things, then we can start to see where we need to fill in those gaps. But by listening to other people, and then just it can take 1 to 2 months, depending on the size of the team and the involvement with the leadership team, to really workshop those things. I can do it in a facilitated day. Sometimes I'll come in and I'll do 1 or 2 days on site and work with the team to really get through those things. It's a lot of thought work, but it's so valuable because it really does get down to the heart of those 3 to 5 main objectives that are going to get you to the 5 year mark, maybe into 5 to 10 year. But probably around 5 years, you're going to need to reevaluate them and maybe tweak them, but they shouldn't be so like thrown out that they don't still matter, right? They are core to who the organization is and who you serve and how you serve and what kind of business you want to be. It's those really annual plans and program plans that things change. But those core strategic objectives really shouldn't change all that much over time unless the core direction of the business is changing.
And it sounds like that is the foundation, right? It becomes the guide. What would you say? Like the guardrails, because if you do see them needing to radically change, you better reposition your entire business. Otherwise, I'd see that as a danger sign. Is that the
Right.
case?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that strategic plan overview, that are those things that are done in that strategized phase, they become a through line for so much throughout the organization. To set those goals, to evaluate those goals, to hold people accountable in annual evaluations, to onboard, all the things.
Amazing. So I know people listening are potentially saying to themselves, okay, Ericka, I get it. I know. I got to pull myself out for at least a little bit from the day to day and actually set some of these goals, the meaningful ones, the key objectives that are actually going to drive my business closer to my outcomes. If you were going to recommend, give them an invitation to write one thing down on their sticky note that they should do either today or this week as that first step, what's the first step someone should take, in your opinion?
I would say consistency and communication. So set up some consistency in how you are meeting with your teams and how you're communicating to align around goals. That would be my sticky note of the consistency and communication are going to take you a lot further without all the other things.
Awesome. I love it. And then last question, is there any story you could share of maybe someone you've worked with that had that light bulb moment where they were like, Ericka, I thought this was going to happen and instead this happened, or that kind of aha moment that they had that spark? Any of those opportunities or kind of moments that you'd share from your experience working with people through this exact challenge of actually developing a strategic plan, developing objectives that actually matter? Any fun light bulb moment stories you'd like to share?
Yes, so I was working with a client and we had done the facilitation of coming up with a strategic plan or reviewing theirs and refining it to the strategic plan now framework. We had created action plans, annual goals, and I was working with the GM on the accountability piece. And there's a really simple meeting framework called the 3 Ps. Large organizations use it, Google, but it's plans, progress, and problems. And just implementing that simple template for a weekly managers meeting was able to give so much clarity and cut out some of the things that they had been challenging with staying on focus in their meetings. And he said that he had, been working there for several years, I think maybe 15 years. And he said it was the most productive meetings that they have had now with just implementing the simple 3 Ps strategy. So hearing things like that are really what excite me about creating such a small change with people who are willing to implement. It's so rewarding to see.
I love that reminder that it's small hinges swing big doors. You don't have to have radical overhauls in order to see real progress.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Thank you, Ericka, so much for sharing your wisdom, your expertise with us here on the Sticky Note Marketing Show. Thanks for being our guest expert today.
Thank you, Mary. I really appreciate it.
If people want to follow up with you, what is the best way to continue the conversation? Because I know there are some people who are going to need you in their business.
Sure. I have a website. It's ericaalice.co, C-O, so it's Ericka. They're able to book a discovery call. I also will do free strategy sessions, a 90-minute free strategy session for your guests if they complete their free My Business report. So that really can give me some context. And I feel it's one of those things. If people are willing to spend the 10 to 15 minutes filling out the report to inform me about their business, then I'll give them the 90 minutes to follow up and explain what some results and actionables might be for them.
That is very generous. If you are listening to this, take Ericka up on this before she books up because her brain on your business, I promise you, is gold. So thank you, Ericka, so much for sharing that. And if you're watching or listening, check the show notes so that you can get in touch with Ericka.
Thanks,
Thanks so
Mary.
much, Ericka, for joining us. And I appreciate you sharing your expertise today.
Great. Thanks, Mary.
All right. And thanks for all of you watching and listening today. We'll see you on the next episode of the Sticky Note Marketing Show.